Have you ever felt like you weren't alone in the woods even though no one else was supposed to be there? What if a fun night out with friends turned into a relaxing experience you'll never forget? In this story, three friends go camping in a forbidden forest, only to find something far more terrifying than the darkness. Strange whistles, unsettling figures, and a lethal surprise await them deep in the forest. Before we begin, if you enjoy true scary stories, like this video, and subscribe to Ghostly Whispers for more chilling stories. Summer is, undoubtedly, the most delightful season, and I would gladly perish on that hill. My love of the summer does not revolve around partying or drinking, as you might expect, but nature, warmer weather, and the outdoors are inextricably linked. And I guarantee you that I spend more time outside than inside when the heat hits. This occurred on a warm night in mid-June a few summers ago. I was 17 or 18 at the time. For context, there is an extensive nature preserve near my home. When I say massive, I mean it. It's nearly 1,000 acres in size. Some parts of that still need to be stilled. Two of my friends and I spent the night camping in those woods. Camping there was technically forbidden and borderline illegal, but we figured there was no way anyone would find us in this dense forest. We simply had to go as deep as possible. Chuck was the camping enthusiast in the group. This kid loved cosplaying as a Boy Scout and probably knew about 100 knots. Our other friend Jackson always provided the drinks. If we were sober, he was unhappy. That is precisely how things went when Jackson was involved. I remember the gentle summer breeze blowing through my hair as we packed Jackson's car. The weather was ideal. Not too cold, not too hot. After a few beers, the three of us found ourselves lugging camping equipment through the woods around 11:30. I can't lie. As we marched, I could feel the alcohol begin to hit me. Chuck always carried an industrial-grade flashlight, so the forest's darkness was not an issue. As much as I enjoyed being outside, walking through dense woods at this hour was unsettling, even with Chuck's flashlight. After about a half hour of walking, we arrived at a small, flat clearing ideal for camping. We pitched our tent according to Chuck's instructions and set up our chairs. The fire was the next step. Chuck took the lead on this again, and after a few minutes we had a decent fire going. Jackson reached into his bag and tossed me another beverage. He then grabbed his JBL speaker and began playing music. The atmosphere was perfect. We must have talked and drank for at least 2 hours. We were all drunk, and I could tell the other guys were turning in. Jackson turned down the music and began collecting discarded beer cans. Just then, a deafening whistle broke the silence. I almost jumped out of my seat, going from a drunken stupor to high alert in a matter of seconds. I don't know how to describe it. The whistle was loud but still seemed distant. Jackson quickly turned off the speaker, and we sat silently, exchanging concerned looks. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. We sat frozen for what seemed like an eternity, listening intently to our surroundings, but there was nothing. It almost seemed quieter now than when we first arrived, eerily silent, with none of the usual wood sounds you'd expect. My mental replay of the whistle showed that it wasn't an animal's sound. It's best described as a standard baseball whistle. Chuck finally broke the silence, quietly encouraging us to pack and leave. However, Jackson and I disagreed with the plan. We might run into whoever made the noise, which I was terrified of. It was past 3 a.m., and meeting someone this late would only lead to trouble. Chuck reasoned that whoever made that noise was probably aware of our presence, which was a frightening thought. I wasn't sure what to do. On the one hand, staying put went against every survival instinct I had. However, packing up and leaving at this hour did not appear to be a much better option. We finally decided to wait it out. I went to put out the fire, but Chuck warned me against it, saying a fire would scare away dangerous animals. Only then did I realize the gravity of the situation. We were literally miles away from civilization. It was 3 a.m., and there was an unknown entity in the darkness. After about 10 minutes, we resumed talking, albeit at a much lower volume and without music. None of us felt safe enough to sleep just yet. Then, out of my eye, I noticed something small fly over Jackson's shoulder and land in the fire. It was a firecracker, I screamed bloody murder as it started to sparkle in the fire, and Chuck cursed as he jumped out of his chair and bolted into the darkness. Jackson and I scrambled to catch up, leaving our belongings behind. We caught up with Chuck, whose flashlight was beaming wildly through the woods as he frantically ran. We ran until we couldn't anymore, and Jackson collapsed and vomited. Chuck turned off the light, and the three of us stood there panting, trying to figure out if we were being followed. To my surprise, no one seemed to follow us. I don't think I've ever felt so afraid. Why in the world would anyone have done that? We needed to decide what to do. Jackson wanted to leave the woods forever, but Chuck was reluctant to leave his camping gear. Additionally, he reminded us that the fire was still active. I was perplexed. How could he be concerned about forest fires after what had just occurred? Eventually, I agreed with Chuck that we should check the website. After all, no one had pursued us, so there was a slim chance that whoever threw that firecracker was just playing a cruel prank. Chuck was a navigation expert who could actually retrace our steps. I could see the glow of the fire as we approached quietly. Before I could get any closer, Jackson put his hand in front of me and pointed with a horrified expression. I strained my eyes to see the sight in the distance. What I saw was the most terrifying thing I have ever seen. 3 people were sitting motionless in our chairs, like statues. The person whose face I could see appeared lifeless with his mouth hung open. I was afraid of moving. What exactly were they doing? I realized that they weren't even talking. This wasn't normal. We watched for a little longer before deciding to back off. We turned to leave, but Jackson's foot hit a rock, causing him to curse in frustration. Within seconds, the fire's glow faded as if it had been covered with a cloak. It was swift. We didn't stay for another second. We ran away from the site again, but could hear footsteps crashing behind us this time. We did not stop this time. We bolted from the woods and ran to Jackson's car. By some miracle, we were not pursued out of the woods. We didn't say anything on the way back because we were all deep in thought. Chuck insisted we return to the site during the day to collect his belongings. Jackson wanted nothing to do with it, but I agreed to accompany Chuck. After some searching, we found the site, which mainly appeared untouched. That is, until we got closer and noticed the putrid odor emanating from Chuck's tent. He unzipped it, and we discovered a dead, rotting rat. It was sickening. I took the hint and haven't returned to that preserve.